so comfortable with you. I feel like
draft drama in the NBA. The NHL is going to have plenty of that coming up, plus a trade that is equal parts heartbreaking and helpful for the Sabres. And on the fight side, it is UFC 317 weekend and WWE Night of Champions. A ton of stuff to get to. You're in the right place for it. Couch Potato Diary Live starts right now. Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Deeds in the chat, fired up over on twitch.tv/primetimepk. We're also hanging out on youtube.com/@couchpotatodiary and kick.com/primetimepk. Tons of stuff going on in the world of sports today. So excited to break it all down with you. I got the plan for what I want to talk about, but plans can change. Whatever you guys want to chat about, throw it there, and we will discuss it. As always, we are presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca. We got the great Calgary swag. We got this Cannons hat on sale right now. Plus, we got a lot of great Calgary shirts to help rep this city. If you need a little bit of energy, like we said, we had the draft last night. Round 2 in the NBA draft is tonight, which honestly, a little stupid, but whatever. Then we got the NHL draft coming up on the entire weekend. We got fights. We got wrestling coming on. The Blue Jays are playing poorly, so we got a lot of things that are going to need your energy, and with that, you can head over to swiftenergy.gg and use that code PKPrimetime for the 25% off. Like I said, we got a ton going on in the show today. We are live on a number of different platforms. Wherever you're at, make sure you hit the subscribe button or follow, plus hit that share button. It really does help things out a lot around here. Want to get the conversations going, get these chats going. Love the people that are in the chats always. Deeds, like we said, celebrating Sweet 16 with the subscription, and a huge thank you to Deeds for that. Love chatting with him, but would love for him to have more people to chat with. So let's share those videos and get things rolling. Let's start talking with the draft that happened last night. We'll have plenty of draft talk coming up around some of the other drafty things that are happening, but the NBA draft happened last night, and while the top didn't provide many surprises, there was a lot of drama that came after that. So let's discuss all the NBA draft drama from last night. The NBA had its first round of the draft last night, and while we kind of knew what was going to happen in the first few picks, a lot of drama took place afterward. Let's discuss. I think a lot of the drama begins at number 5, where Ace Bailey, from all accounts, handled the pre-draft process with the Shedeur Sanders playbook and did not get the Shedeur Sanders results, as he did not have to go through a extensive draft dive or anything like that. He gets picked actually earlier than some people thought, at 5 to the Utah Jazz. Now, obviously, there was a lot of drama around this, as he was just no-showing different draft workouts, and seemed like he handled a lot of this process quite incorrectly. And while you can talk about a number of different ways and different scenarios around that particular thing, I don't put a ton of it on the kid, because I think a lot of it is the representation. And it sounds like the representation is new, and it felt like a bit of a disaster. And when things are handled that poorly, I'm not going to blame the 18-year-old. I'm going to put this on the adults that are in the room. And so shame on all of them for how they handled it. But a lot of the talk was that this was to fall to the Brooklyn Nets at 8. That was the hope. Was that apparently from the Bailey side, is that he didn't want to go to one of the first 7 teams. He wanted to go to the Brooklyn Nets. And that is all fine and well. You got to remember Danny Ainge is there, though. And he is looking at this as, look, I'm picking at 5 and I just got a top 3 talent. That's a win for me. And Danny Ainge is very much of the, I'll make it work. And if I don't, I'll trade you for something else. That'll make it work. But I'm not just not going to take the 3rd best player available at number 5 just because, oh, he doesn't want to come to Utah. Danny Ainge is going to have to work around. He doesn't have to come to Utah a lot if he is going to build a championship roster with this Jazz team. And so when you look at the best case scenario for this for Danny Ainge and the Jazz organization, if this hits, like if this kid was just kind of being shitty because the adults around him were telling him to be shitty, then I think there is certainly an opportunity that you can sit the kid down and be like, look, no hard feelings. That was kind of brutal, but clean slate. Come in here, ball out. And if he comes in and balls out, this is the exact type of high-level talent that the Jazz have been looking for. When the draft lottery happened and we looked at if this was a conspiracy or not, one of the things we talked about was, did the NBA just get rid of tanking? And you look at the Jazz as a pretty prime example of that because it looks pretty bleak for this organization right now. There isn't a whole lot of high-end talent on this basketball team, and if being bad and getting high up in the draft aren't going to happen side by side, then it is going to be a very long road for this team that can't exactly build things up through free agency, right? So they have a long road to get to. This is the type of a high-end talent that if it hits, makes that road, it either makes the road shorter or it allows you to travel faster on it. That just, depending on what you want to, what metaphor you want to use with that. But this is a fantastic, I think, a fantastic gamble here for the Jazz. And if you meet with the kid and he doesn't want to be there, then you ship him out. Who cares? He's gone. All right, see ya. We'll make the trade. We'll get some value back for this, and we'll build it up that way. And I could kind of see that there were talks, like he was offering to trade the pick to Brooklyn. Be like, look, we'll make a deal here. Let's do this. And they're like, no, you're not gonna. He doesn't want to go there. You're not gonna take him. And Danny, almost out of spite, just being like, oh yeah, watch me, and selecting the kid. It gives them a high-level chip to play with, and I think it really does kind of show, like, no, we're taking this seriously here and trying to get out of this. It also affects the Washington Wizards because it did kind of feel like they were going to be the team that would benefit from that type of a pick, and they were going to be the ones who are like, who cares? We'll get him to like the DMV. It'll be fine. And off in Washington he goes. That doesn't go their way, but I still think they pivoted really, really effectively in getting Trey Johnson. That is the offense that they needed really, really badly, and he can be the type of player that can kind of springboard it. Again, this is an if he reaches his potential type of a thing, but that could be potentially transformative for the Wizards. And you look at drama in the NBA, which I think was the big word of the night. The Wizards are kind of getting away from a lot of the drama. Now, moving out Jordan Poole off to the New Orleans Pelicans and bringing in CJ McCollum with just adding a level of professionalism to that organization. With Kelly Olynyk, who has always been an interesting big, either coming off of the bench or in a starting role. And now with Sarr, you pair Trey Johnson. All of a sudden, you have a pretty good offensive upside sort of a team. Defense is going to need some work, but offensively, there's quite a bit of upside there. So I think this was a really smart pivot for Washington to kind of avoid the murky waters, so to speak. And I think this was, not to look too big picture on one night, but I do think there is a bit of a changing of the guard happening here in the NBA, where you are looking at a couple of teams that I think have kind of benefited from just being those teams, quite frankly. When you look at the Miami Heat and the Brooklyn Nets, Brooklyn, I think, really did believe that Ace Bailey was just going to fall into their lap at number 8. And so that's why they didn't do a whole lot of movement at any particular time. And so when that didn't happen, they took a real long shot. And you could, like, there were so many different opportunities, it felt like, for Brooklyn to trade down and make a couple of big moves with their picks. And instead, they just reach on a kid who I saw one draft board had him at 26. Like it feels like Brooklyn's whole strategy is basically what happened with KD and Kyrie will happen again, and people will just want to come here because it is Brooklyn, ignoring the fact that we have like no history or anything at all in this particular market. So you have that, and then you have Miami, who it does kind of feel like they just feel everything is going to fall into their lap, and they were viewed as one of the losers of this draft. Now, we'll see that there have been times where, oh, this is going to be a complete loser, and it has turned out amazingly. And there have been times where it's like, look, you guys absolutely stole this draft. This was a number one home run draft for you guys, and it doesn't turn out. So those sorts of things can be a little bit overdone. But I do think that some of the analysis around, oh, well, you can't really grade a whatever until such and such a time. And I do think that there is a little bit to that. There's a lot to that. But I also think that there is something to be said for knowing the board and knowing where players should be drafted. And it is also easy to just say, oh, they should have traded down. A number of other teams would need to say yes for that to be the case. And I think it's maybe a little bit more difficult than fans think. But I think that some of the criticism of, oh, draft grades, what do we know? I still think that you can look at what was available, where was a player projected to go, and where did he actually get picked, and figure out if there was a winner and a loser in that, even if the player outplays expectations. So I think this is a weird tangent on draft grades, but we're allowed to have them, and we're allowed to change them as the years kind of go on. So a lot of drama happening at the top of the NBA draft. There was more drama with the Raptors as well. We will get to Toronto's pick in a second, but looking at a few of the other teams here, the New Orleans Pelicans, as they go into this new era, I absolutely have zero idea what they are going for. Like, trading for Jordan Poole in the year of our Lord 2025 makes literally zero sense to me, and I don't know if I'll be able to be convinced otherwise of anything. Like, I like Sadiq Bey a little bit, but when you have everything that is going on surrounding Zion Williamson right now, I just don't think another headache like a Jordan Poole is the way to go to elevate your basketball team. Like, they feel like it has crumbled around everything out there in New Orleans. And obviously there was a lot of expectations and a lot of hype around Zion Williamson. And when you see it at its highest level, boy, it looks great. But the fact that it was never able to click with Ingram, it felt like it had so much potential. And now it feels like it would be pretty miserable to be a New Orleans Pelicans fan. And the way I think that they handled this draft process and the way that I think they've handled this offseason so far has been very, very poor and puts them in a difficult spot, I think, going forward. But the night was not all bad, as it starts off predictably with Cooper Flagg going to the Dallas Mavericks. And we've been hyping up this kid for a long time. Now we really know the landing spot for him. And it gives you an interesting roster for the Mavericks, depending on which way they want to go. The point guard situation is tough right now with no Kyrie Irving. But aside from that, with just point guard X, you have Clay, Flagg, AD, and Lively, with PJ Washington and Daniel Gafford coming off of the bench as well. Like, that there's a lot of fun that you can have with this roster. And I think if you bring in a point guard, this team is actually pretty competitive. They re-signed Gafford. I would imagine Lively, I can't remember if they've signed him or not, but they have things set up very well with their bigs for a little bit. It also gives them a couple of trade chips to kind of play around with. So for a team that was in a pretty dire spot after the trading of a superstar, they now have a few options and have quite a bit of intrigue going into next season. Harper to the Spurs, it makes a lot of sense. I just feel like he checks a lot of boxes that you would want him to check. And I know that some prominent voices in basketball media are saying that Harper and Fox just won't work together, so why are you even going to try? I still want to try it if I'm San Antonio. And if it doesn't work, you can flip Fox out of it and make a trade. But I don't think any trade that you could make for Fox now is not going to be there in January. So I don't mind San Antonio giving it a try, and not just throwing the keys to the car at a very important time to Harper and just nope, you have no leeway whatsoever. We are trying to maximize our star player now, and it is up to you to get that out of him. So while I think he could be that type of a player, to expect him to do that year one is a little bit much. So I don't mind keeping Fox around there if you're the Spurs. I do think that maybe you need to add a little bit more on this roster because the West is so competitive right now. And like Phoenix is just accumulating bigs like you wouldn't believe. But I think getting getting Williams in that trade from the Hornets and going out and getting Malawak from in the draft, I think sets them up in a very interesting way now going forward. And so even the teams that you kind of felt were going to be falling off, they're not fallen as much now. So this West is going to be competitive. So I don't think it is, okay, mission accomplished for the offseason for San Antonio, but I do think that it shouldn't result in a gigantic blowing up of the roster unless a Giannis becomes available or something along those lines. The real drama, it felt like, was going to start at 3, and I guess the big surprise was that there was no surprise at all with the 76ers sticking and going with Edgecombe. I was convinced the second that the 76ers got the 3rd overall pick that they would be moving on from that pick and going out and trying to accumulate more star potential, which I think is a real feather in the cap of Edgecombe, because Daryl Morey, it is all about the stars. And if he thinks that Edgecombe is worth it to stick and pick at 3, then he must see star potential in him. So it gives you an interesting now backcourt with Edgecombe and with Maxey. We will see about the rest of the roster. The injury issues all over the place on that team. But this is a very interesting fit now with Maxey and with Edgecombe, giving you quite a bit of athleticism, I think, for this particular basketball team. We're not going to go through every pick. The last one I just want to talk about here is Knuppel going to the Hornets. I think that this could go down as one of the more important picks of this draft. I think, like, a lot of people are focusing on that top 3 and then 5 with Bailey, but I think Knuppel at 4 has the potential to be, again, I don't want to be over dramatic here, but I think it has the potential to be a little transformative for the Hornets. He has so much ability as a consistent scoring threat that you kind of forget how good he is at some of the other things. And I think, while he is not mellow in terms of his playmaking ability, I think if and when Ball gets hurt or wants it to move on or anything like that, not that it is going to be just like oh, well, that's fine because we have him already, but Knuppel adds a playmaking ability that will at least allow this team to keep their heads above water if Ball gets injured. So I think while this does, when everyone is healthy, this gives them a very good scoring option. It also does help things out depth-wise when it comes to playmakers, which has been a real issue for the Charlotte Hornets. But overall, like, I think you look at the top of this draft, and obviously, like, the Dallas Mavericks get into a substantially better spot. The 76ers, I think, have a long ways to go still, but at least have been able to set a foundation now with your guards. Harper feels like he can be a 1B to Wembanyama's 1A if these guys can reach their potential. Knuppel feels like he can bail the Hornets out of quite a few situations. Bailey, if it clicks, it just feels like the exact type of a player to get the ball rolling for the Utah Jazz, and the Washington Wizards getting Trey Johnson, bringing in a lot of that offensive help that they needed desperately. It just seems like the top 6 really were able to just like home run. And it'll be varying degrees of those home runs. But for the positions that those teams were in to get the players that you wanted, that is, I just feel like this was a draft that lined up very well for the boxes that these teams needed to check. Now, that's a lot of projecting, and it's a lot of night 1 after the draft talk. 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe even all 6 aren't going to work out the way that these teams want. But for today, as we are talking about this, not 12 hours after the draft wrapped up, this is, I think, a very good spot for a lot of these teams. So it was dramatic up at the top, but what ends up falling in place, I think, is very, very helpful for these teams. So I think it's a really good sign for a lot of these groups that they were able to kind of check the box that they needed coming out of draft day. Just a reminder that things are ever changing around Couch Potato Diary. So you can follow me on social media. I am at Primetime Klein on Instagram, X, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky. So we talked about a lot of drama in the NBA. But we've only talked a little bit about it, kind of been dancing around one of the more dramatic moments of the NBA draft. And of course, it involves the Raptors. So, Let's talk about the latest player who didn't seem overly thrilled to be coming north of the border. So, some Raptor talk for you here today as the Toronto Raptors select Colin Murray Boyles with the 9th overall pick in the 2025 NBA Draft. This is a life-changing moment for this person, something that only a few human beings in the history of the world will ever understand, knowing what it feels like to get your name called on draft day at all, let alone in the top 10 of the NBA Draft. And Colin Murray Boyles reacts to this life-changing news, a dream coming true, by looking like someone punched his dog right in front of them and then noticeably on camera going, fuck, as he is buttoning up his shirt and the rest of the family looks like they've been transported to a funeral. That sucked to see. That really did. From a Raptor fan standpoint, that really stung. And look, I understand they are the Canadian team in the NBA, and your mileage may vary on what you think of Toronto. A lot of players who have played there say that they love it. Quite a few players that have played there say that they hate it. I think it is a little frustrating that for 2 weeks we were talking about this renaissance of small markets in the NBA with, Oklahoma City and Indiana. No, you know what? Like, we talk about small markets. These are actually awesome places to play. And you have all of that. But then when it comes to Toronto and Canada, it's like, oh, yeah, no, but that still sucks up there. I mean, Kawhi wanted to leave. Bosch wanted to leave. Why would anyone want to stay up in Toronto? So, yes, no, by all means, Colin Murray Boyles, boohoo, and be justified in that. Like, it sucks to have this reputation of Toronto keep coming up. And I understand, like, it's in Canada, it's a weird conversation to have because you have a fan base that is across the country, right? Like, that this is a large country that we have. And so when people act like this around the Raptors and the Blue Jays, all of a sudden we get defensive about it. It's like, hey, what's so bad about this? Toronto, da-da-da-da-da-da. But then the second it's outside of this context, you talk about Toronto and Calgary, it's like, oh yeah, it's terrible. Those people are, it's the worst place ever. They're so full of themselves and all of that. But and I know I am talking, I have a Calgary Cannons hat on, and I know I am talking from Calgary, but I do want to tell you that Toronto is genuinely one of the best cities in the world. It is a major market in Canada, and from a population and media standpoint, like one of the bigger places in the world, and a cultural melting pot and all of those things. And I hate that no one recognizes it because it's on the other side of a line, and it just gets absolutely shit on all the time, especially in NBA circles. And for this to still be a thing, after you would see the passion of the fan base when it was the Raptors against the Cavs, and Doris Burke and LeBron have to stop an interview because the Let's Go Raptors chants are too loud after they just got beat in the conference finals, and to see all of the passion around the parade in 2019 after the Raptors won, and all of the passion of that fan base, and so many different players saying, look, it is actually pretty awesome up there. Like, I get you have to take your passport out every time you fly back into the country, but aside from that, it's a pretty dope place to live. You still, for whatever reason, every other place seems to get the, oh no, it's actually not that bad, except for the Canada thing. And for that kid in the biggest moment of his life to just not only look at, or to not look at how big of a moment this is getting into the NBA, but instead to focus on, quite frankly, how little he knows about Toronto is just so disappointing. I will say, it seems like he's saying all the right things after. You know, like Steve Francis, when he started crying when the Grizzlies drafted him, he didn't try to do any damage control. And this kid, at least someone was smart enough to get in his ear and be like, hey, could you not make this seem like the worst thing that's ever happened in your life when people are interviewing you, and can we try to bail out of it? Now, let's get better about lying, shall we? Oh no, I was actually saying, what the fuck? Like, my dream has come true. Like, dude, there's cameras here, man. We know. But again, it was smiles after. It was talking about how excited he was about the organization and the bibbidi babbidi blue and all of those things. So at least he had the decency to lie about it. After the fact, he wasn't good at lying about it, but at least he had the decency of lying about it after the fact, so it didn't seem like it was just the biggest slap in the face to this fan base that was probably ready to embrace you before this particular moment. So at least he is trying to do some kind of damage control here. I don't think it means you have to trade him immediately. I think that Toronto is a city that I think it is worth it. I know it didn't work with Kawhi, but it did work with DeRozan. It did work with Kyle Lowry, where just bring them into Toronto and see if it's as bad as you think, and maybe you'll grow to love it. And if he doesn't, then you can move him. But I don't think that you have to move him or cut him or anything like that, tar and feather him in public or anything, just because of a bad reaction. It pissed me off. It, like, actually, a little bit of it broke my heart a little bit. To have someone be so upset at the biggest moment of their life about coming to my team, that was the reaction they had. But I also willing to move on if he's willing to accept that being someone who has to live in gasp Canada is maybe not the worst thing that has ever happened to him. So that's the real life aspect of all of this. The basketball fit, this team is a type, don't they? This is a guy who can guard a few positions, but doesn't shoot particularly well, but is strong and tough defensively, and at 6'7", can even play some minutes at the 5 if you do a small ball lineup. That's basically every player this team tries to bring in. And they pivoted away from it for a second toward the tail end of the Nick Nurse era when it seemed like, okay, this really isn't working. And now they just go back to the same thing. So I think that he is going to fit in what this team views their identity to be, but I don't think that this is going to help in many ways from a basketball standpoint. I think it will add another talented human being onto a roster that actually has quite a few of them and more than people are willing to give this team credit for. But I don't think this raises the floor at all. I don't particularly think it raises the ceiling all that much either. So I think he'll be fine. He will probably play in a bench role, and with a lot of young bench kids out there, I think that his flexibility on defense is actually going to help that unit out there. So I do think that there are some positives to it, but it just didn't feel like the move that could have been there. I said before, I wanted Malawak. When the Raptors didn't draft him, because I wasn't able to watch the draft live. When the Raptors didn't draft him, I assumed that he had gone somewhere before that point. And so to see that he went to the pick after them was actually quite surprising to me, because he is something this team doesn't have. And instead of Murray Boyles, who just kind of just fits in with everything else that you already are utilizing. So I wanted Malawak. I thought that there was something there. And even if you wanted the versatile, can defend a few different things, Essengay was the better version of that. A little bit taller and maybe not quite as refined on the offensive side, but still had that length and that tenacity and experience at the European level that I think could have been a bit more beneficial to the Raptors. So I'm out of one side, I'm being like, hey kid, why didn't you want to come here? And then on the other side, I'm like, but here are 5 reasons why I don't think you should have been here anyway. So a little yin and yang, but I just felt like there were options that were out there that could either be something they didn't have or be a better version of what they were trying to do with this. So it's not a pick that I love, and maybe I am looking for some negatives because the kid went, fuck, after being drafted by my favorite team, and it made me feel some kind of way. So that's what happened in the NBA draft. What could happen in the NHL as we are getting ready for draft day tomorrow? A lot of intrigue around this, including a trade leading up to the day that I think really significantly shapes things in the NHL. So let's talk about a bit of a surprise trade from the National Hockey League coming down last night. The NHL is in full off-season mode, and with that comes a lot of wheeling and dealing, and a lot of focus was on the Buffalo Sabres, who had a couple of restricted free agents that it felt like would be difficult to keep around. They were right on one, as the Sabres have made a move. JJ Peterka is on his way. It's a mammoth trade, so to speak, as he goes to the Utah Mammoth for Michael Kesslering and Josh Doan. The initial reaction of this trade is, that's it? And I think that is a fair one. Even if you want to be prospect guy or whatever who knows more about Michael Kesslering than the general hockey watching audience, I do think it is fair to suggest that Kesslering is a good fit for this Buffalo team, while also it being an underwhelming return for the guy who tied for first on your team in scoring at like 23 years old and could be a foundational piece. Like adding, if you just look at what Buffalo brought in, it fits a need in a very clear way. And so that is great. But to suggest that this is a win for the Sabres because they are trading a guy who could be like a core piece of a pretty good hockey team away for just a box check, that kind of stings. And when you factor in the rest of the Buffalo Sabres history with this sort of a thing, I think it really stings from a Sabres standpoint. So that's why I opened the show today saying that this trade was equal parts heartbreaking as it was helpful for the Sabres. So let's look at it from the Buffalo standpoint here first. Moving on from Peterka has to really suck because it is another young player that is on his way out for not wanting to stick around there and not being maximized by what is happening with the Buffalo Sabres. And that is a gigantic failure of this organization. They have been able to identify and bring in actually quite a few very talented human beings. But whether it is insufficient coaching, insufficient development, poor communication, or whatever, they have dropped the ball with almost all of them now. And to have a roster with the high-level talent that they have in Dahlin, in Powers on the blue line, in Tage Thompson scoring all of the goals up front with JJ Peterka as well, I don't know how you can look at all of that and then see where this franchise is and think, oh, it's just been a little unlucky or something like that. I don't believe that to be the case. I think that this has been a wild bit of mismanagement for Buffalo, and that continues here. Now, do they pivot okay out of it? I suppose. But it is a bigger overall look at a player who should be, for a team that is looking to take a step, that should be looking to take a step this year, to be moving on from that kid has to be just a backbreaking experience for this franchise and puts them in a very difficult spot, I think, moving forward. And for Kevin Adams, I don't know. Like, I don't know what better you could do out of this situation, but you definitely could do a lot better than what is happening there right now. Like, I don't think he's making the best of a bad situation. I think it is a bad situation, and he's trying. That basically seems like it from the Buffalo side. In terms of what they are bringing in, like I said, it fits a need with Michael Kesslering coming in. It is a young, pretty good right shot defenseman who is still on a relatively affordable contract. And so, like, obviously out here in Calgary, there is talk of, Rasmus Andersson, because they need really badly a right shot defenseman. Now, Rasmus is not coming in at a high ticket here right now at 4.5, I believe it is. But that is going to go up significantly going into next year. And so maybe there was not a want on the Buffalo side to lock into that sort of a thing. So you bring in someone who kind of fits the age range a little bit, who can play effectively over on the right side. And it checks that box there, I think, very, very effectively. So it does fit a need. And there is going to be a little bit of frustration today, I think, for a few fan bases, because Peterka is a very interesting player and would help a lot of teams out. And this return, it feels like most teams' fan bases are going to say, well, we could have done that. But I do think the combination of Kesslering's age, experience, and effectiveness, and the dollar figure that comes with it, did make him kind of a unique target for the Buffalo Sabres there. So again, I don't think they got enough in a move for a Peterka. I do think that this helps their hockey team in a way that will be probably tangible for them next season. The other part of it too is Peterka is an RFA. And so if he just wasn't going to sign an extension in Calgary, then he wasn't going to sign an extension in Calgary. You know, then you've traded Rasmus Andersson for nothing. And well, shit. So this, I can see where most fan bases are going to be like, okay, what? But it does feel like at least Buffalo had a sense of a plan coming into this to try to make this move and have at least filled a need. But they have left behind another one in a very talented young forward to go along with the uber talented young forward you have up front in Tage Thompson. So it checks a box, but I feel like if you're trading a player of that caliber, you might want to check a few boxes along the way. Just a thought. On the Mammoth side of this, I mean, it's a win. There's no other way of looking at this. I think from their perspective here, that this is not a gigantic win for this hockey club, as we've been talking about it, they are looking to take another step here this season, and to bring him in, add him to an exciting young forward group, and it looks like it is $7.7 million that he is locked up in until 2030 at 23 years old. That's a really, really strong add now to this team. 27 goals, 41 points for him last season. And now to add him to an exciting forward group already with Keller and Gunther and like Krause and all of those guys that you have on this team, it feels like a really good spot for the Mammoth to be working from. It does take away on the blue line, and okay, but they already had Durzi and Marino on the right side, and I don't think that this kid is cracking that necessarily. Now, we've talked about it again in the whole Rasmus Andersson thing, but we have talked about the Mammoth as a spot there, and I still think that they are that, because Andersson is better than those guys. But Kesslering right now wasn't going to get past that, and if you can turn that into, you know, a high-level goal scorer who almost had 30 last year, boy, that seems to help a lot of things out, doesn't it? So I think this was great. The other big part of it is you add, again, potential 30-goal scorer, you trade away from a position of strength, and you hold on to what is probably the best trade asset you have in the organization right now in that high draft pick. So this is just check, check, check for the Mammoth, that if they still want to go big game hunting, they still have the cap space to do it, and they still have this excellent trade chip at 4 overall to be able to go out and try to significantly add to your hockey club. So just a great move by the Mammoth all over the place in what was a bit of a surprise there last night. So again, boxes were checked. Was value met? I don't think it was. But there was obviously a plan for the Sabres, and they went after it. There are going to be a lot of plans over the next little bit as draft day is coming up in the National Hockey League. Of course, we're going to have all sorts of coverage for you here on Couch Potato Diary, both on the YouTube side. The streaming side is going to be wound down a little bit, but on the YouTube side and on podcast, wherever you listen, Spotify, Apple, or anywhere like that. So let's get into the draft itself as we get ready for the big day coming up tomorrow. It is draft day in the National Hockey League, and this one is a unique draft. You have a superstar down the line in 2025, 2026, so I guess 2026, with a Gavin McKenna. This year, there are foundation pieces of this draft. This doesn't feel like the go out and get a superstar. This is the, when you get a superstar, this piece is going to already help you have a foundation in place that you can just go, so you're not Chicago or something like that, right? The one, I guess, kind of caveat to that is Matthew Schaefer. This feels like a franchise changer on the blue line. And it just, in the nicest way possible, he feels like an Islander, where it is a strong, high character guy who is very, very responsible and all of those things. But there is an elite upside to a lot of the talents that he is going to have. And so whatever direction the Islanders are looking to go in, whether they do want to get a little bit younger or they do feel like this is still a roster that can compete, this is a team that I think really, obviously, big shocker here. This probably won't be the social breakout from this one, but Matthew Schaefer is going to help the New York Islanders. But whether you want to be competitive right away, I think defense is quite the position to pick up, so maybe you don't want to rush him into this point, but if you want to be competitive, he's going to be able to help that out very, very soon. And if you're going for a youth movement, it does not get much better than solidifying things on your blue line with that kid. So great work by the Islanders to be able to get that pick. I imagine the Sharks do go next. There's been a lot of talk about trades in this draft, but I don't think the Sharks are at that point just yet. I think that this is still... this might be the last one or second last one, depending on how next draft goes, but they are still accumulating high-end talent. They just don't have a lot of NHL players on this roster, to be perfectly frank with you, but they do have a lot of high-end skill that you can get really excited about. So they are going to add that here. I think a lot of people are assuming that it'll be Misa going to the San Jose Sharks at 2. Sam Cosentino's mock had Frondell going there. Either way, I think that it is a good pick for the Sharks. I know more about Misa, so that would probably be the direction that I would go. Anyway, after that, it feels like a lot is up in the air. Blackhawks at 3, Mammoth at 4. You look at what could be available there, and those are very beneficial pieces. Like, you talk about players who could play in the type of hockey we just watched in the Stanley Cup. And Martone fits that, at least from what we have seen, to a T. And whether it is Frondell or Misa, if Sammy Koss is right and Misa ends up going 3, it is to the point I wonder if the Blackhawks just kind of like, man, that would be tough to pass up on that sort of an opportunity. But they are in such a desperate spot right now. Like I have said a number of times, Kyle Davidson is general managing for his job this year. And I don't think if Connor Bedard has a 40-point season this year, he's going to be able to tell ownership, yeah, but we got Misa in the farm system and he in our prospect pool, and he's going to help us in a couple of years, as we waste the guy who was supposed to be helping us now. So I think this pick, from everything you have heard, is, and just from logic standpoint, this should be available for the Blackhawks, and they should be able to get a pretty penny for it. And I do wonder if they are waiting until closer to really see what the Sharks do at 2, to see how much value there could be in this particular pick. But this feels like a very important moment here for the Blackhawks. And we just talked about them with the trade they made with JJ Peterka. The Mammoth are in a phenomenal spot here at number 4. I do wonder now if the Peterka pick, or the Peterka acquisition, makes this pick less available than it was before. Because I think if you were expecting to add someone who could score 30 on your team, and you have the 4th overall pick, I think it's pretty fair to assume you would have to trade that pick to go and make that move, right? So the fact that they don't, I wonder if now it's like, okay, well, we just added that. We have a ton of cap space. Free agency is what it is. But maybe we can go out and land another piece there and still add a Martone to our prospect pool. Boy, this feels like win-win-wins all around. Or they could go out and really try to solidify that thing. I know a lot of people out here in Calgary are really hoping that the Mammoth feel like they are a right-shot defenseman away. Now, I don't think it would be 4 for Anderson straight up, or else that trade would have been done by now. But with more pieces involved in that, maybe that is a spot for Calgary to try to jump into. But the Mammoth feel like they hold a lot of cards right now, and there are going to be a lot of teams looking to move up into that. It feels like a lot of the picks are in play. And it does feel like there are a lot of guys in similar tiers. And because of that, combined with teams at varying levels of desperation, I guess, what would be the word to use going into this offseason, I think that it is going to be really intriguing, and there's going to be a lot of moving and shaking, because one player that some teams have at 5, other teams could have at 23. It feels like there is that kind of a clump there, and probably not down to 23, but it does feel like there is that kind of a clump there with all of these. And so there have been a lot of drafts where I have gone in saying, no, there's going to be a lot of movement here, and then we just go 1 through 32 and the draft is over. It's like, well, That was boring. But I do think that just because of the uniqueness of this offseason, and the uniqueness of this draft, that there is actually quite a bit of intrigue with how a lot of the moves could happen here in the NHL draft this year. So very, very fascinated at everything that could play out. Obviously, here we got the Calgary focus. I'm on Calgary Radio. Will be tomorrow, by the way, 1 to 3. I'm going to be back with Logo on Sportsnet today on Sportsnet 960. So we got to get some Calgary talk in for my Calgary people out there as the Flames enter this draft. Not necessarily drafting where you would think they would, given what the roster looks like. But the Calgary Flames still with a top 20 pick. Let's take a look at what draft night could look for them. So the NFL draft was a while ago. The NHL draft is here as we are on to the final moments before the names are called out here over the next few days. And for the Calgary Flames, this is probably not where a lot of people expected the Flames to be drafting at the beginning of the season, as they will select 18th. It would have been 16th, but the whole thing with Montreal and all of that, but they still end up with the 18th overall pick. And so a couple of options here for the Flames. Obviously, the organizational need is number one, center, and at 18, that is simply not an option for this team, unless someone falls drastically, and then you have to wonder about that anyway. And so for me, the two that I am really kind of hoping for from a Flames standpoint would be Reshny and Kindle. Both of them, not the biggest dudes, but from everything you hear, like elite level character, elite level work ethic that allowed them to produce at the WHL level. And so it does not fill a need for this organization, I don't think. But still, I do think, while there are some forwards that I am interested in the organization, most of the strength of this prospect pool is on the blue line, and a bit of that could be coming up to the NHL roster this year. I think that Reshny and Kindle both just add a little bit more forward depth to this prospect pool. And whether that means that someone is available in a trade, or it is just adding more players into this organization, I like that. Obviously, you do get a little worried about slightly undersized, but worked really hard and produced in junior. Because at some point, like, okay, that works in junior when it's against other junior guys, but now it's against grown men. How is that really going to work here for this team? And I do have a slight concern with that, but I do think that both Reshny and Kindle are the type of players that kind of recognize their potential size to fit, and they're not 5'3", right? Like they're 5'11" coming in here. If it was 6 feet, we probably wouldn't be talking about it. But they're both just on the inner side of that, and so I think A, they're not as small as you might think. But B, you do have, again, that work ethic and the understanding of, okay, where am I going to need to improve to really fit in here? And I think they've been doing that for a while in their lives. And so I think that they will be fine in those. Are they potential game changers? I don't think so. Their middle six forwards would be my initial slightly educated opinion on these particular players. But I do think that it is adding more talent to a talent pool that a couple of years ago was pretty dry. But it does feel like a lot is in play for the Flames here. Obviously, the Rasmus Andersson trade chip is a very interesting one. And I think there will be a lot of panic in Calgary if that one isn't played by draft week. Because there is kind of a want to get as much high-end talent in here as you can. I do think that if you are adding picks for next year, it ain't the worst thing either. Like that seems like it is shaping up to be a very good draft in the NHL. So if you are adding to that, then oh well. So I don't think it is a must to trade him this time, but it does seem like there are a few options up ahead, depending on how aggressive the Flames want to get and the desire of different players to maybe want to go to those spots as well. So I could see the Flames having a very busy blockbuster type of day, or a day that in the end they are just drafting 18 and 32, and then we are talking about those picks after and looking at different future moves. And honestly, I would kind of lean to more the other one. Like, it would be exciting if the Flames make a gigantic trade and move up to 4, or 3 even, or something along those lines. But I think the more likely scenario is probably this team sticks and picks 18-32, and maybe there's a move that you can make with both of those to go up a few spots to get someone. But I I think that you can still get a very solid player in this draft at 18 that is going to help your organization out. So I would caution against waiting for the big blockbuster type of a weekend for the Flames. I think those moves are coming, but I don't know if it is going to be in the next few days. So that is the story from the National Hockey League. Let's move into combat sports now, as it is a busy weekend around the world of sports. UFC 317 going down in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, and we've talked about it all week. This is an interesting fight card, and one that I am actually quite intrigued about. So let's dive in to UFC 317 coming up this weekend. UFC 317 gives us a couple of title fights at the top of the card and a couple of interesting fights a little bit further ways down. This is your UFC 317 main card preview. Let's just dive right in. We're going to start from the bottom and work our way up, as it'll be Peyton Talbot taking on Felipe Lima in the bantamweight division. Talbot, 26 years old, standing at 5'10" with a 70-inch reach. He will switch stances on you. He is 9-1 with 7 wins by knockout, 1 by submission, his only loss coming by decision. It also came in his last fight, as he lost to Ronnie Barcelos at UFC 311 at the beginning part of the calendar year. His first career loss, MMA or professional or amateur. He's 3-1 in the UFC. He had finished all 3 coming off of the Dana White's Contender Series, where he picked up a unanimous decision win. Taking on the 27-year-old Lima at 5'6", training at All Stars Training Center, 14-1 in his career, with 4 wins by knockout, another 3 by submission. And 1 submission loss in his career. Picking up a unanimous decision win in his last fight at the tail end of 2024 over Miles Johns. It is back-to-back wins in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. We mentioned he's 14-1. He's on a 14-fight winning streak. Lost his first professional fight and has rocketed up from there. So you always love that type of a journey for a fighter. Here, for Talbot, when you look at the stats, you certainly see someone who is going to put the volume on. 6.73 strikes landed per minute, compared to the 3.5 of Lima, and with an accuracy of 55%. So he is slinging them, and he is landing them effectively. And so I feel like, given that, I think that there is a bit of a higher threshold with Talbot compared to that of Lima. Now, Lima is also someone who is getting a lot of takedowns. At almost 2 takedowns is his average here, and the takedown defense for Talbot is at 75%. So this is going to be a fight about who can kind of dictate where this fight takes place. I think Talbot is going to be able to do that, and I just think that the pressure he can put on the offensive striking side is going to be a little bit too much for Lima, who is a sound defensive striker in his own right. And again, someone who has 4 knockout wins to his own. So it's not like, we're not talking about like a 1999 Gracie Jiu-Jitsu guy. Like, this is someone who knows what he is doing in the stand-up department, but I just think I just think the tools are a little bit sharper on the Talbot side than they are on the Lima side at this point. We go to the lightweight division, as it is Beneil Dariush taking on Renato Moicano. Dariush is 36 years old, standing at 5'10", with a 72-inch reach from the southpaw stance. A 22 6-1 record, with 5 wins by knockout, another 9 by submission. He is coming off of a loss against Arman Tsarukyan back in December of 2023. He also suffered a loss against Charles Oliveira by knockout in 2023. So it has been a bit of a rough stretch for someone who, for a while, was knocking on championship's doorstep at 155 pounds. Taking on Renato Moicano, who got his title opportunity in his last bout. He is now 36 years old at 5'11" with a 72-inch reach, 26-1 for the record. 20 wins, 6 losses, and 1 draw for the record. So, we're not talking about someone coming in at 25 wins over 500, but 4 wins by knockout, 10 by submission. As mentioned, his last fight was a submission loss against Islam Makhachev. He is 4-1 though in his last 5 and is a BJJ black belt. Many are the man who would lose to Islam Makhachev. I think if this fight happened a few years ago, Beneil Dariush would be a substantial favorite and would be my pick for this. But I just feel like, in the last couple of fights with Sarukian and with Oliveira, there has been I guess, exposing of some issues in Beneil Dariush. I think there has been a bit of a falling off of the talents of him as well. And I just don't think Moicano has suffered that same fate here. So I think that when again, you look at the stats, Moicano is landing about one full strike more than Dariush per round. And Dariush, as the years have gone on, he hasn't really handled that forward pressure all that well. Not that Moicano was going to come forward in a way that Charles DeBronx or Arman Tsarukyan would, but I just think that, like, Moicano, I'm trying to find a sensitive way to say that. I don't think Moicano's fallen off as much as Dariush has. And it sucks because I've liked Dariush for a really, really long time, and it does seem like it has just reached a ceiling and is starting to come down. Where Moicano, it hasn't dropped as much for him yet. I think this is going to be a fascinating matchup if it gets to the ground. I think if it stays on the feet, it's going to be a little bit sloppy, and I think Moicano has the advantage there. So if this fight goes to the ground, you have Moicano, who is a BJJ black belt, who does have 10 submission wins in the Ultimate Fighting Championship, but I think Dariush might be a slight level above there. So if I am correct in that, then Dariush wants to get this to the ground, but I just don't know if he's going to be able to get an opportunity to get it there while he is still in an advantageous position, if that makes sense. So again, I just think Moicano is a touch better in all the parts that he is going to be able to control and pick up a win in this bout. Very interesting fight coming up in the flyweight division as Brandon Royval goes into this one against Joshua Van. Royval, raw dog, at 32 years old, is 5'9" with a 68-inch reach. He is 17-7 for his career, with 4 wins by knockout, 9 by submission. His last fight was a split decision win over Tetsuya Tairo back on the Ultimate Fight Night card in October of 2024. It is back-to-back wins after a submission loss against Pantoja back at the end of 2023. He's 0-2 against Pantoja and has won 5 of his last 6 otherwise. Like, he is a very high-level fighter, except for fighting the best of the best. Joshua Van wants to prove that he is that. At just 23 years old, he is 5'5" with a 65-inch reach, 14-2 for the career, coming off of a knockout win over Bruno Gustavo da Silva at UFC 316. And I know what you're looking. You can look at either the podcast or look at the video right now, but it's 317. You're right. This guy fought, at the time of this recording, 19 days ago. By the time he walks into the cage, it'll be 21 days between fights in the Ultimate Fighting Championship. That is insane. The joys of youth on Van's side. He is 7-1 in the UFC, which was his exact record outside of the Ultimate Proving Ground. I am endlessly fascinated by this fight. You have Royval, who has a very high level of skill and is probably the second best fighter in this division right now. But he has stumbled twice against the champion, so what does he do? Where can he go? Well, he's going to try to kill the upward momentum of one of the top prospects in the promotion with Joshua Van, who has, like, this is a enormous step up in competition for him. Like, there is, with all due respect to Gustavo da Silva, there is a substantial gap between that and Brandon Royval. And so to do this with a regular training camp would be ambitious, but to do this on 21 days notice is just absurd for Van to be trying this. But he is an explosive striker that comes with some accuracy, and the big number for him is 81% takedown defense, going up against Brandon Royval, who can spam the submissions at times, is a good striker, like, it is just a well-rounded fighter, but that would be probably the area that Royval would have a bit more of the significant advantage in, would be on the ground. And Van has been very good about keeping it there. But again, every stat you look at it with Van, he has put that up against someone who isn't close to as good as the guy he is stepping into the cage with. And so I think Van is certainly, there is a path to victory for him, and one that you can very easily conceive in your mind. But I just think it's a bit too much, too soon for this kid. He will get to this level. And honestly, if this fight happened a year from now, I would probably give the edge to Van. It just feels like we're skipping a step in the process here for him. And regardless of a win, if he is able to pull off the victory in this fight, I think it would be up to the promotion to, I mean this in the best way possible, but to hold this kid back a little bit. Because he's going to go from this to wanting to challenge for the championship. And the problem is there's no one else. Really, like Pantoja is running through this division right now. We are getting to lap 2 in this whole thing, and we are starved for challengers in this division. And if you have a 23-year-old who can knock off the guy who I think is the second best in the division, it is going to be really hard to not give that guy a title shot. And I understand that it will look like he is ready coming off of this, but I would preach patience with this just a little bit, because we have seen when we go through these, how many times have we seen guy is on a meteoric rise and he skips a step and he gets thumped, and then it doesn't really go all that well. And all of a sudden, it takes a bit to get back to that level. I would just caution that, because this kid has everything you want for a world champion, except the experience. And I just don't know if it is there. Now, I don't think that conversation is going to matter all that much, because I do think Royval gets the win here, but goddamn, this is probably the fight I'm the most interested in on the card coming up here on Saturday night. That brings us to our 2 championship bouts. It is Alexandre Pantoja taking on Kai Kara-France for the flyweight championship of the Ultimate Fighting Championship. Pantoja coming in at 35 years old, at 5'5" with a 67-inch reach, out of Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, training at American Top Team. He is 29-5 for the career, coming off of a submission win in his last bout and a 3rd consecutive title defense. He has won 7 fights overall. He is 13-3 in the Ultimate Fighting Championship and is just cleaning out the division right now. Just a remarkable run for Pantoja. For Kai Kara-France, he is 32 years old, at 5'4" with a 69-inch reach, born in Auckland, New Zealand, training at City Kickboxing, the gym that has provided us with the talents of Israel Adesanya and Alex Volkanovski. He is 25-11, coming off of a win over Steve Erceg in his last bout, earning a title shot, even though that snapped a 2-fight losing streak. And that is the big part of this, is that Kai Kara-France is a talented fighter and is someone who deserves to be at the championship level. But I think that this is the problem with this division right now, is, okay, he has lost 2 in a row, but he just beat Steve Erceg. And so for his management standpoint, from his standpoint, from the promotion standpoint, hey, he just beat our last title challenger. Like, okay, Erceg probably wasn't ready to be a title challenger either. And so you throw someone in who is probably not ready for that moment, and then he loses, and then someone beats him and is trying to build credibility over off of him being in that moment, but he wasn't ready for that moment. Ergo, I don't know if Kai Kara-France is either. Like, coming off of the 2-fight losing streak, it's great win for him against Erceg. There is a little bit of there is nobody else for this. And so Pantoja has been a tough one to do in the pound for pound, because, like, I don't know if there is a bigger gap in the sport between 1 and 2 in their division than Pantoja and what is happening right now at flyweight. And that's not a knock on guys like Erceg and Moreno and KKF and all of those guys. It is just how damn good this guy really is that is at the top of this division right now. Like, I think Kai Kara-France beats a lot of guys in this division. Just not this one. Pantoja is just better. He is better, I think, everywhere. And I think there is a real case to be made that if he wins this fight, he is the best flyweight in the history of the UFC. It is already down to him and DJ. And DJ was so very dominant. And maybe you can talk about the quality of competition that DJ was facing compared to what Pantoja is, but Pantoja is a win away. If he gets this, and if he gets it in a particular way, he will set the record for wins, submissions, and finishes in flyweight division history in the UFC. If he is able to top Demetrius Johnson in all of these different aspects, it is going to be tough to say that he is not better than Demetrius Johnson. If they were to have a fight in their prime, I don't know. It is very close, and I have never said that about anyone else in this division compared to prime Demetrius Johnson. So that is the level that we are talking about, and Kai Kara-France just is not that. So I again, it is oversimplistic. I think Pantoja just wins by being better. I think that this does end up going Pantoja's way, and I would suggest probably by way of submission as well would be my pick on that one. And now we go to the main event. It is Ilia Topuria taking on Charles Oliveira for the vacant UFC lightweight championship. Topuria, the former featherweight champion, coming in at 28 years old. He is 5'7" with a 69-inch reach. He is of Georgian descent and trains at MMA Masters in Florida. 16-0 for the record, with 6 wins by knockout, 8 wins by submission. His last win comes against Max Holloway back in 2024, where he defends the featherweight championship by way of knockout. It is a long run of success for him that now has him moving up into the lightweight ranks to take on the former champion in Charles de Bronx Oliveira, who is now 35 years old, standing at 5'10", with a 74-inch reach, born in Sao Paulo, Brazil, training at Bronx's Gold Gym. He is 35-10 for his career, coming off of a unanimous decision win over Michael Chandler, rebounding from the split decision loss against Arman Tsarukyan. So it depends on how you want to look at it. If you are building up Oliveira, you would say he has won 13 of his last 15 fights. If you are pointing out that maybe this is not the most qualified guy to fight for a championship, he's 3-2 in his last 5. And we talked about it earlier, his wins have come against Chandler, Dariush, and Gaethje. While all good fighters in their time, all of them a bit of a step down. Or a step down from what they used to be. And Topuria is competing to be the best fighter in the sport at the moment. So this is a pretty tough hill, I think, to climb for Charles de Bronx. It is interesting that it is Topuria moving up in weight, although he has fought at this weight before, where he is 1-0 at lightweight. Picked up a performance of the night in a knockout win over Jai Herbert back at the Ultimate Fight Night card in March of 2022. So this is someone who knows what it takes to get up to this weight class. I don't think this is just going to be as simple as, oh, I just cut 10 pounds less and now I am good. I think the way he has gone about everything in his career, this is someone who is going to really attack this and find the optimum way to get to 155 pounds. So a lot of the edges that he had at 145 now translate with him to 155. I just don't think there is anything Oliveira can present that Topuria hasn't seen against Holloway and against Volkanovski and against some of the other fighters that he beat on his rise to the top of 145 pounds. Now, you could very convincingly say that I am taking away from Oliveira because of wins over Chandler, Dariush, and Gaethje, but I am celebrating victories for Topuria over Holloway and Volkanovski. And I don't necessarily have a counter for that. But I just feel like there isn't anything that this version of Oliveira can present to Topuria that he hasn't seen before. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't think Oliveira is going to present anything to Topuria that Topuria isn't better at. So I think that this is the true crowning of one of the pound-for-pound kings of the UFC right now in Topuria. And while a lot of people already view him as a star, this is, I think, the big star-making night for Topuria against Charles de Bronx, and he can pick up a championship at 155 pounds. So I have Topuria picking up the victory here. So that is the breakdown of UFC 317. If you have any thoughts on any of my picks, I can't imagine I'm batting 1,000 on all of your cards. Let me know in the comments if you're watching on YouTube, or in the chat if you're watching live on YouTube or on Twitch. Let me know what you thought of these fights and my predictions of them. Let's move now into the world of professional wrestling, as it is not just the Ultimate Fighting Championship that has a big weekend plan for TKO, as the WWE is off in Saudi Arabia for WWE Night of Champions. So let's talk about it, shall we? Because this is a really, really interesting card coming up. The WWE is presenting Night of Champions, where kings and queens will be crowned, and a greatest of all time will try to dethrone the best in the world. This is going to be a very, very interesting show at Night of Champions. So let's break it down. Sami Zayn against Karrion Kross. This one has been brewing for a while, and a lot of people are very excited that Cross is going to get this opportunity. I think from a match standpoint, this is going to be fun. I think this is a matching of styles that Sami Zayn can really thrive in, and the type of like brutish physical style of Karrion Kross, I think matches really well with Sami Zayn and the underdog character and everything like that. So from a match standpoint, I think these two, pardon the pun, but I think they match pretty well together. From a story standpoint, I think there is some intrigue here. I don't just want this to be Sami Zayn overcomes the odds and he gets the win and we move on. I think this needs to be part of a bigger overall character progression now for Sami Zayn. I don't know if it needs to be him with Karrion Kross just as a team together, or if the attitude that Kross is kind of putting out there needs to be transferred to Sami in some way. But the Sami Zayn tries really hard and wants to be the champion and gets close to being the champion, or at least getting an opportunity to be the champion, but then he doesn't. We can only do that so many times without some character progression. And that is not a knock on the character or on the performer or anything like that. It is just how stories work. We need some progression, I think, with this. And I think this needs to be it. Honestly, there are a lot of opportunities for some pretty significant storyline progression here this weekend at Night of Champions. We go to the street fight. By the way, prediction for that one. I am going to say, this is actually pretty close. You know what? Karrion Kross. I think Karrion Kross gets the win because I think we are going to get a different view of Sami, and I think Kross getting the win, it just feels like he could use it more, and it adds more to the storytelling aspect of it. Rhea against Raquel in a street fight. I would imagine we get some form of Roxanne Perez involvement in this, and that is going to continue the storyline. I wonder if you also get a Nikki Bella coming in, and you just have a bit of a, like, we had talked about before on YouTube here anyway, and it will be on Living Room Lariats, about how where best to position now everything coming out of Liv Morgan. And I had said Roxy just fills in that spot. And that does mean a matchup with Nikki Bella. So have Roxy come out, try to help out Raquel. Nikki comes out to counter it, and now you have set that thing up. In terms of what this match is going to be, these two have a pretty good chemistry together, and I am very, very very, very fascinated to see what they look like in an in-ring capacity. So I think that they are going to put together a very good match, and I think ultimately Rhea gets the win and just continues to look dominant and awesome. But I think this match is going to be an overly violent one with a little bit of story that is happening. U.S. title on the line. Jacob Fatu against Solo Sikoa. It is probably too easy to just assume that at some point Hikuleo is going to come out and cost Jacob Fatu, and he is going to be the next member of Solo Sikoa's whatever they are right now, this new bloodline or anything, and it will be Solo with Cobb, and then either the Tongans after or not, or whatever. But I just think that this is the time for that, and you don't. It feels too early to take the title off of Jacob Fatu, but I think for a strong storyline purpose, you can work with that. Have Fatu fighting from underneath as the babyface now, and just kind of running through a few guys to get to that ultimate Solo destination. And I think that leads to a lot of fun storytelling, a lot of interesting opportunities for Fatu, and to be able to build him up into an even bigger star than maybe he already is. So I think that there's going to be shenanigans, and I think Solo is going to win the United States Championship. Queen of the Ring. It is Asuka taking on Jade Cargill. This does feel like, again, pardon the pun, the coronation for Jade. It feels like this is the time that the rocket ship that people have been wanting to attach to her for a while is now going to be attached to her, and gives her the opportunity to get into that main event stage. I don't know if the matchup with Tiffany is going to be the way to do that, but I think that you already saw more from her against Roxy. It is not perfect still. I don't know if it ever will be, but the presence is obviously there. The character is obviously there, and I think that is enough to get her into the title picture here. So it's been good that Asuka gets this opportunity and this spotlight and a few wins under her belt, but now I think it is time for Jade to get the Queen of the Ring win. On the King of the Ring side, it is Randy Orton taking on Cody. And I think there is enough of a story with Randy Orton and either Cena or Punk that there is at least like 2% of you that would think maybe they do go back with Randy Orton against John Cena at SummerSlam. But I think the obvious direction here is Cody Rhodes taking on John Cena at SummerSlam, and you get there through a King of the Ring performance. I think this match is going to be fun. I think that these are two guys who are going to work very well together, and maybe it does set up some kind of a rivalry down the road, but I think that the main story here is Cody against Cena as we go into the back part of the year of Cena. That this is probably the way to start that off. And then the undisputed title is on the line as John Cena takes on CM Punk. The build for this has been interesting. It has been frustrating at times. I said on the look ahead on Monday that I think that this is the Pipe Bomb 2.0 promo was fine. I didn't love that we didn't get much of a follow-up off of it or anything like that, but I think it was fine. And now I think that you at least have presented like that sort of a tribute act in this thing. The match itself, I've said before, I'm not looking forward to it. I'm just not. And I have major concerns about what this is going to look like. And in the end, I just don't see a way that I don't believe that Punk is going to be the one to take the belt off of Cena at Night of Champions. I don't buy that right now. So I think Cena is going to be the guy coming out of this here at Night of Champions, progressing toward SummerSlam. So those are my picks for what could happen at Night of Champions. As mentioned before, throughout the week, we have a new wrestling podcast with Couch Potato Diary. It is going to be called Living Room Lariat. It is going to be available on Friday morning with all the wrestling coverage that you have heard here on the flagship show of Couch Potato Diary, plus a couple extra bonus features on there for the podcast listening audience. So if you are a wrestling fan who doesn't necessarily want to sit through all of the sportsy stuff on here, I understand it. I think there's some good stuff, but I understand. There is now a wrestling venture for you with Living Room Lariat. Right now only available on Spotify, but should be available everywhere soon. And it will have that and some stuff that you won't hear on the flagship podcast part. We're still going to do it on the live streams, and the video portion will still be up on YouTube. But if you just want it all together in one spot, it is going to be available over on Living Room Lariat, and it is also going to be available in video podcast form. So there you go. A new podcast coming from Couch Potato Diary. Mentioned with that there is going to be some exclusive audio for that podcast. This is going to be one of those, as WWE has entered into what is for them a very unique venture in a partnership with TNA and AAA. So what is this supposed to look like, and what do we want it to look like? Let's take a look at that, at what would be the dream scenario with WWE, TNA, and AAA. So, the WWE is in a partnership now with TNA and AAA, in a way that they haven't really ventured into before. So what does this look like in a perfect world? What do we want this partnership to look like with WWE, TNA, and AAA? I have said this before. I think it would be great to have multiple stops for guys and girls to go work on their skills. If you don't have a story for someone on the main roster, send them down to NXT for a bit of a run there. Just like a PLE cycle or two. Keep them busy, keep that experience, maybe discover a bit of a different character with that. If it takes a spot now from someone in NXT, then you send them to TNA for a bit of a cycle there. If they need to learn a new hold or just need a bit more bigger arena type of experience, AAA is right there for them as well. And if anyone breaks through in all of that, now you bring them to WWE. I just feel like it's a very sports way of looking at it. And I think it is the next step in the evolution of the Performance Center and what they wanted. And I know that the want was NXT Mexico, NXT Japan, NXT England, NXT UK. They tried that. Didn't really work all that well. And I think they learned from that to not just make this NXT Mexico and turn it into that sort of a thing and try to WWE-ify that sort of a style, I think it would be very beneficial to kind of keep all of them similar styles, right? Not like similar style to what they have now. Not necessarily just put them all under a WWE blanket and okay, there you go. But I just think the roster is so deep right now in WWE that there are so many opportunities for performers to work all over the place. Like, look what they just did with Nick Wayne and Kevin Knight in AEW going off to Best of the Super Juniors. That had to be an amazing experience for those performers. And so Cruz del Toro, who put on a fantastic show at Worlds Collide, and I don't know if we have seen him on WWE television since, right? And part of that is like he's in an LWO storyline with Rey Mysterio, who is hurt currently. So there is a bit of a pause on that. But while that's happening, like the Garza's got to go to Triple Mania. Send him on a Rey de Reyes tournament or something along those lines. See how he actually handles this main event spotlight. I love what they are doing with Trick Williams right now because Trick has certainly outgrown NXT, I think, at this point. I think everything he can learn at NXT, he has learned. But I also don't think that he is main roster ready at the level that he would be brought in at as a former NXT champion and someone who has the theme song and a lot of crowd support behind him. And so I think allowing him to still develop as a top guy just in TNA now, instead of just like in kind of meandering, going nowhere feuds in NXT, I think that makes all the sense in the world to do something like that. And so again, if you want to see we know what Cruz can do in the tag team, but we're trying to make him stand out a little bit, but we don't have the TV time to just actually dedicate to putting this guy over as a top star. So now have him go on an X Division run. Have him go for the Latin American Championship in AAA or something along those lines. I just think it gives you the opportunity to see what you have in a lot of different spots. And I'm not saying, okay, half the roster now go to AAA and now Triple Mania looks like a WWE Evolve. That's not what I am saying. But I think you can pick and choose a few different guys to put into those spots. And we're seeing him now come up with opportunities on the main roster and stuff like that. But I think this would have been a great opportunity for a Karrion Kross to join whatever stable JBL has going on in AAA right now. I don't know if I want as much attachment to Alberto Del Rio as that would bring, but just have him be in some kind of a high-level spot over there. So you're not just having these people sit on the shelf and sit on the sideline for a while and then maybe get a couple of matches off on main event. Like, basically the main event roster should go somewhere else, right? And get those opportunities. So I think that there is a lot of growth that can come and a lot of potential that you can have in something like this. And I just think it opens up so many doors. And the opposite is true, right? Like Joe Hendry, we can debate if you want to have your champion losing in 3 minutes to Randy Orton at WrestleMania, but the TNA Championship was at WrestleMania on Netflix. Like that is kind of a cool thing and kind of a big thing. And so now you get this opportunity to go with this the other way. Give him a chance over, like a few of them are getting opportunities now on NXT. Maybe have him pop up on the main roster for a run in something, right? Like just, if we're doing these fatal four-way whatever, it's like, yeah, toss someone. Eddie Edwards, maybe not the best example, but toss a Moose into that Rusev match or something and just give them a heightened exposure with that. Same thing with the Mr. Iguanas and the Psycho Clowns and stuff like that. Like they now get the opportunity to come here as well. And it allows you to keep things fresh when you have 6 hours basically of main roster content to fill every single week. And it also allows these other performers to get new experiences and to get new opportunities in different areas, different styles, and maybe you stumble upon something. And so I think that there is a real benefit to this. The main challenge is that you want all these areas to keep their uniqueness, right? You don't want AAA, TNA, and NXT to all feel like the same version of something. You want AAA to keep that lucha heritage and keep the authenticity to it. You want TNA to keep that underdog status that they have. You want NXT to still be focused on developmental. It is a tricky balance to try to find, but I think there is a way of doing that allows a lot of your roster to get a lot of opportunities. And it also I think it would help you creatively as well. I think that's one of the things that is happening with Ray Phoenix. And the idea that some of these performers would need developmental is borderline insulting, right? And so to suggest that Ray Phoenix should have started in NXT is a gross thing to have come out of my mouth. But I do think that it is not just for the performer to learn the WWE style and to learn what it is like to be in WWE. I think it is also for the company to see what works with him creatively. What are some ways that we can utilize this performer, and what scenarios, what different character traits, what can we kind of maximize? How do we use him, basically? WWE hasn't really found that with Ray Phoenix yet, and I think he would have benefited from a run in NXT just so they could see, okay, how should we work with this particular performer? I think that there is really something there with him. So I think that you could find that in a few different spots. Like you send someone off to TNA, put them in a storyline there, and it's like, oh shit, that we could do something like that here. And you find different creative ways that you can really maximize these characters. So I think that this is a real opportunity that shouldn't just be a couple of our guys pop up on their screen a couple of times and a couple of their guys pop up on our screens a couple of times. I think there is a real partnership that could be had with WWE, TNA, AAA, and maybe some others along the road. It's just that WWE would have to completely change how they have always done anything. That's it. All right, that is going to do it for the show today. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you are watching, hit that subscribe button and hit that follow button, depending on where you are watching. If you're watching live right now over on Twitch, a follow would be amazing. A subscription would mean the world. Thank you so much. I haven't mentioned it yet. There is also a tip jar in the description of the YouTube video whenever you are watching, or as a panel on Twitch and Kick. Certainly not required. I understand the era that we are living in right now, but if you have the means, I certainly would appreciate the support. If you are listening, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating and a review. That stuff helps the podcast out immensely, and I would so very much appreciate it if you were able to do that for me. I would love it. Thank you so much for that. As far as the next stream goes, I am hoping to do something tomorrow, but I am not hoping to in the way that I'm going to put it out there. So keep it locked on my social medias. I'm at Primetime Klein on X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky. That will be where all the updates are. But if nothing else, we'll be back on Monday reacting to the NHL Draft, getting ready for NBA free agency and NHL free agency, and a whole lot more. So thank you guys so much for hanging out today, and I will talk to all of you either tomorrow or next week. Have a great rest of your day or week, everybody.